Good morning.
Good morning.
What's everybody waiting for? And the funny thing is, winter is still 10 days away.
Yeah.
It is. Let's just get this going real quick. Well, while we're waiting, it's computer technology works against us. It snowed last Sunday. It's snowing this Sunday. But you know what? I don't care what's going on. The gospel is not going to be stopped. Look, the Jews cannot stop the gospel. The Romans were unable to stop the gospel. The atheists today are unable to stop the message. It's not going to be stopped today. I don't care if it snows. I don't care if the laptop's working. I don't care if my notes are eaten by my dog. The gospel will be preached. And while we're waiting for the computer to be on, David, is this your last day?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your service. And we should all give him maybe talk to him after, give him a farewell handshake.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
It's coming out of here.
it's coming on. Well, hey, it's okay. Listen, we're going to talk about the fruit of the Spirit again today. We started 2 weeks ago with the introductory lesson. And today is going to be all about joy. And next week's going to be about peace. So maybe you're thinking to yourself, wow, this is a real lighthearted type of deal. And yeah, I mean, you guys know me enough now to know that I do not take myself too seriously. But, when it comes to the gospel, when it comes to discipling others, this is not a joke. And I'm as serious as a heart attack. This is not, it's not a game. You don't get to come to church and act the part of a Christian and then leave and then go home and do whatever you feel like doing. It's being a Christian is a full-time job, and there's a whole lot of responsibility. And it's not just for someone who comes up here and preaches. It's for all of us at all times. So today's title is A Heavenly Inheritance. We talked a little bit about, if you were here last Sunday after the lunch, we talked a little bit about adoption and orphanage and how our true inheritance is from the heavens. It's with God. It's not with our biological mother or biological father. It is our true inheritance. Where we find our joy is through... Where we find our joy... Hey, look, 2,000 years ago, they didn't have any of these problems, did they? They just preached. Look, we find our joy from God. I pick up a Bible. I get more joy out of that than I do out of reading a Sports Illustrated or watching the news. And that's because the problem here is we tend to confuse joy and happiness. Are they the same thing? Of course they're not the same thing. So what I was going to show you was a picture of a national championship ring. I don't know how many of you follow college football. Florida State University, back in the 80s and 90s, a powerhouse college football team. They still are. They were coached by a man named Bobby Bowden. Bowden's a good Christian, by the way. And they won a ton of games every year. They would win 9, 10, 11, 12 games. But that one championship always eluded them. And, Bowden, who got a lot of accolades, was often criticized. He wasn't able to win the big one. Well, then in the 1993 season, they broke through and they won the big one. So, as the game ended and all the players kind of went back home, Bowden had his staff in his office. And he said to them, now that we have won the big one, do you really feel any difference than you did yesterday? And they all kind of looked at him like, yeah, that's a really good point. And Bowden, being a good Christian, said, you know why? Because you won the big one the day you accepted Christ into your life. And I know I'm treading on sensitive ground here when I talk about sports not being the most important thing. Because yes, I understand there was just a World Series celebration a few weeks ago. And I'm not saying don't find joy in things like that. But your problems don't go away when something great happens, unless we're talking about eternal joy. And any alcoholic will tell you, any drug addict will tell you, any addict of any sort will tell you, when they're doing whatever the addiction is, sure, it seems like all is right in the world. But you know what? Then they sober up. Do the problems go away? They don't go away. They get worse. And I kind of put this in my little blurb this morning on the bulletin. When you are saved, it's not like, well, life gets better. No, life doesn't get better. We get better. Life is still the same crazy stuff that we saw 2,000 years ago. I'm going to guess this just isn't going to happen today. Well, anyway. Well, I am going to need a Bible then. Someone pass me one, please. Wow, look at all this. Perfect.
NIV.
NIV, perfect. Thank you.
Let me get on
You know what? Why don't you keep that? I'll take this. Thank you. All right. We're going to end up talking about 1 Peter, chapter 1, verses 3 through 9. So we hear the phrase "jump for joy" quite a bit. And what are some reasons we would jump for joy? Well, maybe you aced the test with your friends at school. Hey, jump for joy. That's wonderful. Maybe you're about to celebrate the birth of a baby. Certainly a good reason to jump for joy. Maybe it could be as simple as walking your dog on the beach. And I had a really nice picture of a man walking his dog, throwing a stick into the ocean. And then I was going to say, well, if that was my dog, he just would have kept going, and I probably never would have seen him again. But that's happiness. That's one way of temporarily finding joy in your life. There's an acronym, and I'm not a big acronym guy, but it says JOY. You know what that stands for? What is it?
Jesus, others, and yourself.
Yeah, Jesus first, others second, and yourself third. There was a man, a special needs man at the Canby, Ohio, Minnesota church, and he lives in a group home. But he would always come, and he wrote me kind of what that was supposed to be before I left. It says, love God, love others, love your minister. This was a man after Matt's own heart. But joy is not confined to earthly things. It's confined to heavenly things. The two main topics we're going to talk about today are joy and inheritance. They actually are very much linked together. So why would Peter, of all people, write about joy? He went through all kind of stuff, didn't he, when he was in his discipleship, and then even afterwards. But think about it. Who shaped Peter more than anyone else? Jesus, right? Peter was one of Jesus' original disciples. What did Jesus say to Peter? He said things, among others, like, follow me, and I will make you fisher of men. And he said, you are Peter, son of Jonah, but I will call you Cephas. You know what Cephas means? It means rock, which is really interesting because Peter, he was kind of a shoot first, ask questions later guy. He was very impetuous. He wasn't really a rock at all. But that just goes to prove that Jesus can work with any of us under any circumstances. On this rock, he says, I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. If you turn to John 16 real quick, when they are in the upper room, and the disciples know something's about to happen, they're just not 100% sure what it is. John 16, verse, I think it's 22. Yeah. 22 through 26. Oh, is this the King James, Belinda? Oh, the King James version. It's a shame Mary Lou's not here. She would love this. Okay, I'm going to read the King James. And ye now therefore have sorrow, but I will see you again, and your heart shall rejoice, and your joy no man taketh from you. And in that day ye shall ask me nothing. Verily, verily, I say unto you, whatsoever ye shall ask the Father in my name, he will give it you. Hitherto have ye asked nothing in my name. Ask, and ye shall receive, that your joy may be full. These things I have spoken unto you in Proverbs, but the time will come when I shall no more speak in Proverbs, but I shall show you plainly of the Father. At that day ye shall ask in my name. And I say not unto you that I will pray to the Father for you. I feel like I'm in a southern Louisiana church back in the day, but that's okay. Hopefully you get the point. And the fact is, Peter's in the audience when Jesus says these things. So he knows where he's going. And you get grief, and that goes right to joy. Peter wrote his letters to the persecuted Christians living in Rome right around the same time as Paul was done with his prison epistles. Why was he writing to this audience? To warn them about persecution, but also to encourage them to get through it. And I think it's important that we remember that every generation thought that, well, this is it. They thought that their generation was going to be the last one, which really kind of convoluted the idea of inheritance to begin with. There was a story about a boy who, when he grew up a long time ago in a town where most families had a mother and a father. But he was born to an unwed mother. He never met his father. And the kids knew this, and of course, kids being kids, well, they would tease him. And they'd say, you don't have a daddy. Where's your daddy? Who's your daddy? And they would always ask that question. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? And he didn't have a response. So this poor guy would just run and hide and not want to be with anyone. It was terrible. When he was 12 years old, a new preacher came to his church. He didn't know anything about him. And then after church one day, he went up to him, and everybody could hear him. And he said, hey, son, who's your daddy? Everybody was like, screech. Kind of got awkward like it is now. And the preacher figured it out. He said, okay, I know exactly who you are. The spitting image. You are a child of God. I see the resemblance. You're a child of God. That's quite an inheritance. Now go out, son, and claim it. And from that point forward, this little boy was brimming with confidence. Anytime someone made fun of him, he would say, you know what? I'm a child of God. Now that is a word of encouragement. Now, let's go to today's text. 1 Peter. If you're looking for 1 Peter, it's right before 2 Peter. 1 Peter 1, 3, I'm going to start with 3 through 5. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which, according to his abundant mercy, hath begotten us again unto a lively hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible, that's right, and undefiled, and that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for you, who are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. We use words, at least in the NIV version that I was going to put up there, and it's similar really in any of your translations. It talks about great mercy, living hope, a new birth. I love the adjectives that precede each of those nouns. And you think when you read that, wow, what an inheritance. The joy inheritance link is inextricable. It's easy to read into that when you study words like this. Some of you, or maybe not, some people we know were born to very rich parents. And these people never had to work in their lives. And once mom and dad died, they were heirs to millions of dollars, and that was that. Did they really earn any of that money? No. Well, guess what? And I hate to be the wet blanket here. Did we earn our seat at the table, so to speak? Did we earn the grace that God gives us? No. You know why? And whenever I say you, by the way, I'm talking to myself. This may as well be a mirror. Because we're depraved. We are sinful. We're like the pariahs. We're outsiders. We have no business whatsoever being in the presence of the Lord. But isn't that the point? In order to properly embrace the good news, you have to understand the bad news. It doesn't make sense without it. And I believe in this church, we understand it. And because this is a place where we're not worried about political correctness, we're not worried about hurting people's feelings. We just need to hear what's in this book. Bodies perish. And it says it, I think it's verse 4 in here, talking about incorruptible and it fadeth not away. Well, bodies perish, food spoils, memories fade. But we have an incorruptible seed. Is that going to decay? Absolutely not. We are shielded by God's grace. We're protected by Him. If that doesn't lead to joy, I'm not sure what to tell you. We seem to get the concept of inheritance wrong, too. It's funny, I've always thought it was strange. We gain something through an inheritance only when someone else loses their life. So we gain when someone dies. It can be very confusing. Let me give you, this is an actual obituary. Mrs. Jones, 81, died without any survivors. That is, without any human survivors. She left 3 dogs to mourn her passing: Bozo, Dolly, and Skippy. She specified that her $73,000 should go for the care and maintenance of the dogs. When the dogs are dead, what is left would be given to the Walnut Street Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky. A veterinarian says the 3 canines are in excellent health, and the church may have to wait as long as 12 years to receive the money. Here's a couple other fascinating ones. A Philadelphia woman in her will, A Philadelphia woman in her will instructed the executor to take $1 from her estate, invest it, and pay the interest on this investment to her husband as evidence of my estimate of his worth. And another, I'm so proud of my Philadelphia heritage. Another Philadelphia woman bequeathed her divorced husband $1 to buy a rope to hang himself. They don't call it the city of brotherly love for nothing, right? Guys, if it's okay, I'm actually, the electronics are working against me. Is it okay if I do not use this? Can everybody hear me?
No.
No? Okay, well, I will do my best. But to be serious now, the Israelites, they wandered around for 40 years. The only thing that really sustained them was the fact that they knew they were the chosen ones. They were people of God. This was able to, at least in theory, give them the promise that they needed to get through. And by the way, once you are a member of God's family, which we are, our inheritance is guaranteed. But that doesn't mean all is going to go well in your life every single day. Are we allowed to express joy during times of difficulty? What about Peter? When we think of Peter, Peter's at the cross, and he sees Jesus' mangled, bloody, dying body there, and understandably, Peter loses hope. But 2,000 years later, we know better. Or even Paul. Do you know where Paul wrote his letter to the Philippians from? He was in what? He was in prison 16 times. You see the word joy there. He commands us to, it's not a suggestion, he says, rejoice in the Lord always. And he also says in 2 Corinthians 12:10, I believe, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in punishments, in difficulty. Because when I am weak, I am strong. Now, the context of that is the mysterious thorn in Paul's side, if you will, which was really just a messenger from Satan. Paul is I know we're not talking about him right now, but he is a great role model when it comes to being joyous during times of defeat. So I have to ask you, before we get to verses 6 through 9, is your hope, does it consist of wishful thinking, or is it more a confident expectation? Let's find out what Peter says. So we're still in 1 Peter 1, and we're going to look at verses 6 through 9. Again, I've got the King James. Wherein ye greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, ye are in heaviness through manifold temptations, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen ye love, in whom, though now ye see him not, yet believing, ye rejoice with joy unspeakable and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, or as some translations will say, the end result of your faith, even the salvation of your souls. Translated.